Sweden is a beautiful country to visit. There's a lot to see here, but most tourist attractions cost an absolute fortune. Don't worry, I've got you covered. This is a list of the top 10 things you can do in Sweden that are completely free. Museums are awesome, and everyone likes going to a museum, especially if it's free. Unfortunately, in 2023, the state-owned museums in Sweden that used to be free started to charge an entry fee. So you can no longer visit the Museum of Architecture and Design in Stockholm for free, and the awesome medieval museum has closed down, and when it reopens again, it most likely won't be free either. But there's a sliver of hope, because you can still visit some museums for free. The Stockholm City Museum is still free to visit, and so is Accelerator and the National Sports Museum. And you can still enter many museums for free on certain days of the week, such as the Modern Museum on Friday evenings and Liljevalchs Art Gallery on Mondays. And the Gothenburg Art Hall is also completely free, and the Gothenburg Museum of Natural History is free for youngsters up to 19 years old. The state museums have seen a 16% decline in visitors after the entry fees were introduced, so they are looking at ways to attract visitors. So have a look at each museum's website. They might have introduced a day of the week that won't cost you a single krona by the time you decide to visit. The north of Sweden is full of amazing nature and amazing things to see and do. You can look at reindeer and mountains, and you can go hiking and dog sledding. You can also find the world's first ice hotel in the town of Jukkasjärvi. Now, staying at the ice hotel isn't free. In fact, it's extremely expensive. But visiting the ice hotel is completely free, and you can look at all the rooms and explore all the icy marvels you can find there. The rooms are rebuilt every year, so this is an attraction you can return to year after year. If you can stand the bitter cold up north, that is. But then again, the ice hotel is open during summer as well, so that might be a better option. You might still want to pack your long johns though, because even though the ice hotel is completely free to visit, it's still quite freezing. For obvious reasons. What's the first thing you think of when you hear Sweden? I'm not talking about ABBA or winter depression. I'm talking about Vikings. And when you think of Vikings, you of course think of Viking runestones. Runestones are carved stones from around the year 300 AD to 1100 AD, and they can be found all over the Nordics. Most of the runestones can be found in Sweden though, so if you want to have an excuse to go explore the country, then looking at runestones is a perfect reason. Runestones are carved using the Futhark alphabet, which is actually one of the oldest alphabets in the world. It was invented sometime around the year 100 AD, and there are actually several different types of Futhark. An older 24-type Futhark and a newer 16-type Futhark, for example. But you don't need to know any of that to enjoy these, often very intricate carvings. Some notable runestones include the Sigurd carving outside of Eskilstuna and the runestones outside Gripsholm Castle. But you can also see tons of runestones in Vallentuna, north of Stockholm, and in the town of Sigtuna. There's also plenty of runestones on the island of Gotland, and a very famous runestone is the Rök runestone in Östergötland. You can also find runestones in churches, and even in the middle of Stockholm Old Town, as part of a foundation for a house. And the best part is that all of these runestones are full of history, and they're also completely free to have a look at. This is the type of stuff that can happen when trying to record in Stockholm. There's a lot of tourists in the summer, and tourists are bloody loud. Oh well, I guess they'll be done pretty soon, I hope. The royal castles of Sweden aren't as big as, for example, Versailles in France, but they're still gorgeous and full of history. Entering the castles is unfortunately not free, but you can always explore the castle grounds and the castle gardens for free. Some notable castles that I recommend visiting include Drottningholm Castle in Stockholm and Örebro Castle in the middle of the town of Örebro. Also, you should definitely check out Gripsholm Castle in Mariefred as well as Läckö Castle. But there's more. Kalmar Castle, Malmö Castle, and of course the Royal Palace in Stockholm are all well worth a visit. All of these castles offer amazing sights as well as a look into Swedish history throughout the ages. And of course, they're all free to look at. Do you want to visit outer space? Travel among the stars between the celestial bodies of our solar system? Well, that ain't happening anytime soon. But you can visit the world's largest scale model of the solar system in Sweden, and it makes for a pretty interesting road trip. Sweden's solar system is a 1 to 20 million scale model of the solar system, with the Globe Arena in Stockholm as the sun and the center of the model. You can visit Jupiter at Arlanda Airport, Neptune in Söderhamn, and the dwarf planet Eris in Umeå, and Mercury outside the Stockholm City Museum. The whole model is 950 kilometers from the sun in Stockholm to the terminal shock in Kiruna in the far north. There's around 60 different celestial bodies in the model, and visiting them all would be quite an ambitious project. But if you want to have a look at a few of them, it makes for a really interesting trip. Ever since the 1970s, there's been something called 4-H farms in Sweden. 4-H is an international organization focusing on teaching kids about animals and nature and culture and sports. In Sweden, they're mostly known for the 30 farms that are spread out all over Sweden, where kids and grown-ups can get closer to nature. The 4-H's in the name stands for Head, Heart, Hand and Health, and they want to teach kids how to lead productive and good lives. In all honesty, that sounds a bit pretentious, but the farms are really nice to visit either way. These 4-H farms often have different kinds of farm animals, and you can learn a lot about nature as well. Even though it seems like all the animals at this particular farm are away for summer. Just my luck. The farms are primarily aimed at kids, but everyone can visit them to get a break from city life. And the best part is that it won't cost you anything at all. Slottsskogen is Gothenburg's oldest, biggest and most popular park, and visiting it is not only free, it's also a complete delight. It's not just a gorgeous park, there's also a lot to see, like a free mini zoo for example. Wanna pet some rabbits or goats? Then this is the place to go. If you're more interested in esoteric Swedish history, then you can also check out the Spela Shoreline Monument. It's a memorial to an awesome Swedish band and a meme from the early 2000s. And if you're still not satisfied, you can also visit the Botanical Gardens right across the road. There you can see 20,000 different species of plants from 130 different countries. And yes, that is also something you can do for free. I like having something to do when I'm strolling around in a city I'm visiting, and one thing I like in particular is to enjoy the architecture. And luckily, there's a lot of nice architecture in Sweden. For example, Malmö has turning torso and some lovely houses dating back all the way to the 1500s at Lilla Torg. And Gothenburg, Sweden's second biggest city, of course has some spectacular sights as well. And if you find yourself in Stockholm, well, then you're in for a treat. Have a look at the Danielska house at Stureplan or the House of Nobility in Old Town. And don't forget the iconic City Hall and the stunning Nordic Museum. But please forget about the annex to Liljevalchs. I'm not sure what they were smoking when they designed that one. But there's a lot more in other cities as well. The church in Kiruna in the far north is quite amazing, and Lund also has a lot of gorgeous buildings. You can find tons of beautiful architecture all over Sweden, or ugly architecture if you're into some more odd things to see. But either way, looking at all of these houses is of course free. I recently visited the US and I was blown away by the national parks there. Yosemite was breathtaking, Death Valley and Joshua Tree were epic, and Grand Canyon was, well, grand. Sweden has amazing national parks as well, even if they can't compare with the scale of the American ones. But the Swedish national parks are still special in their own way. First of all, the Swedish national parks are all a bit closer to nature. They're not as paved and touristy as the American ones. Hiking Skuleskogen or Tiveden is much closer to wild nature than, for example, Yosemite. And some of the national parks up north, like Abisko and Sarek, are far away from civilization. That's raw, untouched nature, and they provide some of the most beautiful places in Sweden. And unlike in the US, all the national parks in Sweden are completely free to visit. That said, the annual park card in the US is really cheap for what you get, but it's not free, and free is what this video is all about. Let's continue to talk about Swedish nature and what you can do in it for free. There's a lot of paid camping spots in Sweden, but there's also a lot of free camping spots. As in, just about the entire country is free. You can pitch a tent almost anywhere, and you can hike all over Sweden for free. You can swim in every lake, and you can pick wild berries and mushrooms everywhere. The right to roam in nature applies to everyone, and as long as you obey the rules, you're free to go wild camping all over Sweden. So what are those rules? Have a look at my video all about allemansrätten for more details. In that video I show how you can even find some places in central Stockholm where you can pitch a tent for free. I stayed there for one night and I believe that pitching a tent was allowed in that area. No one kicked me out at least. So my final tip for completely free things to do in Sweden is to make use of allemansrätten, the right to roam in nature, and go wild camping to explore the natural beauty of the country. And there you have it. That was 10 things you can do in Sweden that won't cost you anything at all. I hope you found it slightly useful or at least interesting. Like and subscribe, but most importantly, have a great day.